Chelsea always had this way of drawing attention, like the room shifted a little when she walked in. She was polished, graceful, one of those women who looked like her smile had been rehearsed in a mirror, perfect and disarming. Wherever we went, people noticed her. Designer heels, fresh manicures, handbags that cost more than most folks' rent. She lived the kind of life other women envied from across dinner tables or scrolling through Instagram. To anyone looking in, she had it all. A dream marriage to me, Preston, heir to one of the wealthiest families in Newport. The house, the vacations, the car that practically parked itself. But what folks didn't see was the growing silence inside that dream. And that silence? It had weight. Heavy. Cold. Our marriage wasn't what it looked like. Conversations turned into nods. Our dinners were filled with the sound of silverware clinking instead of laughter. The trips, once spontaneous and romantic, had become scheduled performances, smiles for the camera, holding hands for the social post, and sleeping in separate sheets once the lights were off. I didn't see it unraveling at first. Not clearly, at least. But Chelsea did. And somewhere along the way, she stopped caring about keeping up appearances for me. And that's where Leo came in. He was nothing like me. Laid-back confidence. That kind of easy charm that didn't have to try hard to work. I found out later it started small. One of those accidental meetings in a cafe. She dropped her purse. He picked it up. Some movie scene nonsense. But it wasn't the purse he picked up. It was her attention. The way she described him later. His eyes, his voice. The way he made her feel like the center of the room. I could tell she hadn't looked at me like that in years. At first, it was just innocent flirting. A smile here, a compliment there. But that kind of thing grows fast when someone's looking for a reason. And Chelsea? She found her reason. Within weeks, they were meeting up in hotel rooms during her lunch hour like it was some steamy affair straight out of a paperback novel. It wasn't just about sex, though. She said it was how he made her feel, seen, wanted, alive again. I remember the story she told me, later on, about their wedding anniversary. She was lying next to him, tangled in hotel sheets, and let it slip. "You know today's my anniversary," she said with this half-laugh, half-dare in her voice. Leo, surprised, raised an eyebrow and said, "And you're here with me?" That was the first time she told him straight. Told anyone, really, how miserable she was. "He's unbearable," she said. "A bore. You've got no idea." That's when Leo asked her something real. Not flirty, not casual. Just serious. Then why not just leave him? She turned her head, looked at the ceiling like the answer might be painted up there somewhere. And then she said it. The thing that explained everything. "It's not that simple. Before we got married, my father, sharp old man that he was, insisted on a clause in our prenup. She'd signed it without blinking, believing she'd never need to worry about it. But it was simple and brutal. If she ever filed for divorce, or if I ever caught her cheating, she walked away with nothing. No house, no alimony, no car, not a penny." She told Leo all this with a bitter laugh and a shake of the head, still angry at herself for being so naive. And Leo? He just stared at her, quiet for a moment, then said what anyone else might have been thinking. "So you're stuck. You only get out if he lets you out." And she nodded, finally honest, no sarcasm left in her voice. "Exactly. That's why he has to give up first." That wasn't just pillow talk. That was a confession, a battle plan. Chelsea wasn't just having an affair. She was strategizing, like every move in her life was a calculated step on a chessboard. The problem is, when you gamble like that, life tends to flip the board over. That evening, I watched Chelsea get ready the way she always did before one of our formal nights out. She put on that black dress I once told her she looked stunning in. Back then, I meant it. Tonight, it just looked like armor. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair with the precision of a surgeon, dabbing just the right amount of gloss on her lips, checking her reflection like she was prepping for a photo shoot, not dinner with her husband. And I knew exactly why. That night wasn't about love, or celebration, or even habit. It was obligation. We both knew it. She grabbed her purse with the grace she always had, walked out the door like she was stepping onto a red carpet. Perfect posture, perfect smile, perfect lie. She arrived at the restaurant a few minutes after me. I didn't stand. I didn't look up. I just kept my eyes on the menu, even though I already knew what I was ordering. Her heels clicked across the marble floor, and I heard the chair slide out as she sat across from me. She smiled. That camera-ready smile that used to melt me now just looked like something she wore. I didn't return it. She cleared her throat, adjusted the silverware that didn't need adjusting, crossed her legs with a little too much flair, then finally broke the silence. "So, did you choose this restaurant?" I gave a short nod. "Yes." No eye contact. No warmth. She let out this awkward little laugh, like she was trying to shake off the tension. "It's been a while since we've been here, right?" Another nod. Still didn't look up. I could feel her irritation building. She was used to being adored, not ignored. But tonight, I wanted her to feel what I'd been feeling for months. Alone, disconnected, invisible. The waiter came by and set down the appetizer. I didn't say a word about it, didn't offer it to her like I used to. I just picked up my fork and started eating, slow and methodical, like every bite was part of a countdown. Across the table, she was fidgeting, shifting in her seat, tapping her nails against the glass, trying to play the part of the composed wife, but it was unraveling. She stared at me for a long moment, probably searching for signs. Was I angry? Suspicious? Was I planning something? Truth is, I was. But I didn't need to rush. I wanted her to feel the weight of her own silence, to sit in the same kind of emotional desert she'd left me in for months. She finally put her fork down and tilted her head, her voice a little sharp now. "Is everything okay? You seem a little strange today." I took a long sip of wine and set the glass down gently. Didn't answer. That silence. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, calculated, and she knew it. I watched her glance around the restaurant. Other couples chatting, holding hands, leaning into each other. People who still had connection, who hadn't let something poisonous eat away their bond. Her jaw tensed as she looked back at me, and I could feel the tension in her spine from across the table. This wasn't a dinner anymore. It was a slow, simmering interrogation. And she had no idea that I wasn't the one on trial. Dinner didn't feel like a meal anymore. It felt like waiting for a storm to hit. The main course arrived, and she made another attempt to pretend things could go back to normal. She gave a little smile, picked up her knife and fork, and said, "I was thinking, maybe after dinner we could." But I didn't let her finish. I dropped my fork onto the plate. The clink of silverware on porcelain cut through the air like a gunshot. She flinched. I sat back, crossed my arms, and looked her dead in the eyes. No emotion, no softness. Just years of quiet betrayal tightening into one sharp sentence. "Did you enjoy your last meal in an expensive restaurant?" She blinked like she hadn't heard me right. Her lips parted slightly. What are you talking about?" she asked, trying to sound calm. But I could see the sweat beading on her forehead, the way her hand clutched the napkin like it might save her from drowning. I reached inside my jacket, slow and deliberate, like I had all the time in the world. And I did. I had waited for this. I laid a plain white envelope on the table and slid it toward her. She stared at it like it might explode. And then, without a word, I opened it. Photos spilled out. Glossy. Clear. Undeniable. Her and Leo. In hotel lobbies. Slipping into elevators. At lunch. In bed. Kissing. Touching. Laughing like they had nothing to lose. She didn't touch them. She didn't need to. Her eyes went wide. Her face drained of color. Her lips moved, trying to find the start of an excuse, a lie, anything. This isn't. But the words never formed. I placed one more item on the table. A small black USB drive. I tapped it once with my finger. "There's video too," I said quietly. "In case you want to watch yourself in action." That was the only moment she looked like she might be sick. Her hand went to her mouth. She shook her head slightly, eyes bouncing between the photos and the flash drive like she couldn't decide which one hurt more. She looked up at me, desperate, but I wasn't there to comfort her. Not anymore. I was done being the fool. I pushed my chair back, stood, adjusted my jacket, and leaned in just enough so she'd hear every word clearly. "See you in court." And then I walked out. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. The weight of the truth sat on that table like a wrecking ball. She was left surrounded by the ruins of her own choices, photographs like shattered mirrors, reflecting the life she'd gambled away. And that cold restaurant air? It didn't compare to the silence that followed. Within days, it was official. The court papers came. Lawyers got involved. The prenuptial agreement she once called just a silly formality, now it was the law. She had nothing. No house. No money. No car. Not even the designer bags she used to flaunt. Everything she thought was guaranteed disappeared like smoke. Just like that. Because when you bet everything against someone who's already read the rules, you don't just lose. You get wiped out. It felt like the ground had given out beneath her. One minute she was sitting in court, trying to maintain some sliver of dignity, and the next, she was watching her entire world being signed away with a stamp and a judge's calm voice. The ruling was final. The prenup ironclad. Every luxury she once flaunted was stripped away. Her cars, her jewelry, the penthouse condo, even the black cards she used like magic wands. All of it reverted to Preston. All she was allowed to keep were a few suitcases, clothes, toiletries, some personal items that barely filled the trunk of a mid-size rental car. That was it. The woman who once took weekend getaways to Paris on a whim now had nowhere to spend the night. But even then, as she stood on the courthouse steps clutching those suitcases and a trembling phone, she still had hope. Or at least, she believed she did. Leo, the man who'd made her feel seen again. The one who whispered about a future, who pulled her close and promised escape, freedom, love. He had to know what she was going through. And surely, he'd want to help. Be there. Prove everything they shared wasn't just smoke and mirrors. With trembling fingers, she called him. Once. Straight to voicemail. Twice. Nothing. 3 times. Still nothing. Her throat tightened. She sent a message. Then another. Checked his status. No updates. Not online. Maybe he was busy. Maybe his battery died. Maybe he didn't see it. Her mind scrambled to come up with excuses, to hold back the creeping fear that something was wrong. That she was alone. She checked Instagram. Page not found. She checked Facebook. His profile? Gone. WhatsApp showed a single checkmark, undelivered. It didn't make sense. Just days ago, he'd been sending her playful messages, promising they'd leave everything behind. He told her not to worry, that he'd take care of her. Now, he'd disappeared like fog in sunlight. She remembered how he always avoided pictures. Said it was better that way. Cleaner. Safer. Let's live in the moment. He'd say with that grin that made her heart flutter. Back then, it sounded romantic. Now, it sounded calculated. She scrolled through old messages, hunting for clues, anything to prove he was real. But all his stories, the job in finance, the sick mother, the gym schedule, none of them ever came with details. No names. No phone numbers. No addresses. He was a ghost. A beautiful, charming, intoxicating ghost who'd walked through her life like smoke, leaving nothing but ashes. By the second day, her panic had morphed into cold fear. And in that fear, she did something she swore she never would. She reached out to Miranda, an old name from her social circle. A woman she'd never been close with, mostly because Miranda never hid her distaste for Chelsea's glossy, high-maintenance lifestyle. But desperate people make desperate decisions. She opened her contacts, found Miranda's number, hesitated for a second, then hit call. Chelsea showed up at the coffee shop with her hair pulled back, oversized sunglasses masking puffy eyes, and her nerves already frayed. She clutched her bag like it was the last anchor she had left. Miranda was already seated, sipping from a plain black mug, eyes sharp and posture rigid. There was no hug, no smile, just the cold kind of reception Chelsea had always expected from her. But today, it stung more than usual. Miranda looked her up and down, crossed her arms slowly, and without a shred of sympathy, asked flatly, "Did you really think he just happened to walk into your life?" Chelsea blinked. Her lips parted slightly, as if trying to form words, but nothing came out. She looked down at the table, heart pounding so loud it was hard to think. That question alone cracked something inside her. Miranda leaned forward. "Wake up, Chelsea. You were used." The words didn't just land, they shattered. "He never loved you. He never even cared. You don't know who he is." Not really. It was like being punched straight in the chest. The color drained from Chelsea's face. Her hands, resting on her lap, went numb. Her legs trembled beneath the table. She forced out a whisper, her voice cracking. "What are you talking about?" Miranda sighed. Not out of pity, more like frustration. I shouldn't even be telling you this. But honestly, you've already been dragged through enough. So let me put it plain. Leo? He's not real. Or at least, not the man you thought he was. Chelsea stared. Miranda continued, slow and deliberate. He was hired. All of it was staged. Your entire little love story. A setup. That man is an actor. And your ex-husband was the one who hired him. For a second, Chelsea didn't react. Her brain fought the truth, like it couldn't register the sound. But Miranda's face was hard, unflinching. She wasn't lying. She wasn't even trying to be cruel. She was simply being honest. A wave of nausea climbed up her throat. Her fingers curled against the table's edge. No, she whispered. That's not possible. But it was. And the more she thought about it, the clearer it became. The first time she accidentally dropped her purse. The way Leo had said all the right things. How he never shared details. How every meeting felt too perfect. Too convenient. She had been played. Every moment. Every kiss. Every whispered promise. It had all been an act in a script she never knew existed. The silence between them grew unbearable. Chelsea stood suddenly, nearly knocking over her chair. She yanked her phone from her bag, hands trembling as she opened search after search, trying to find something, anything. A real name. A record. A trace. Nothing. Panicked, she called a private investigator. Over the next few days, she described Leo down to the way he smiled, how he walked, the coffee he always ordered, every place they'd been, every name he'd ever dropped. When the PI returned, he didn't say a word at first, just placed a small folder on the table. Inside were headshots. Professional. The kind actors use. And there he was. Leo. Smiling. Charismatic. Hired. He's a contractor, the detective said. Stage name. False background. Been used for setups like this before. Your ex-husband hired him months ago. The first meeting? Planned. The entire affair? Staged. The betrayal? Orchestrated. Preston had known all along. The cold dinners, the silence, the glances, those hadn't been symptoms of distance. They were signs of preparation. While she was trying to escape, he had been laying a trap. And she'd walked right into it. Preston hadn't just hired a man, he had cast a role. A perfectly tailored performance, delivered by a professional whose entire job was to make Chelsea fall head over heels. And she had. Without hesitation. Without question. Without ever realizing she wasn't falling in love, she was falling into a trap. Every tender word Leo whispered, every smirk, every hand brushing her cheek, it had all been scripted. A rehearsed performance meant to lead her exactly to that restaurant table, that manila envelope, that courtroom where everything would be taken from her. Now, sitting in a stuffy office, alone, her fingers trembling around the detective's report, Chelsea saw the truth for the first time with chilling clarity. This wasn't just a divorce. It wasn't even about betrayal. This was annihilation. The life she had so carefully constructed, the image, the lifestyle, the confidence, had been burned to the ground. No more stage lights, no adoring crowd. Just silence, smoke, and the bitter taste of her own arrogance. The show was over, and she was the last to leave the theater. For days, Chelsea wandered through the ruins of her reality. She barely slept, barely ate. The echo of Preston's final words replayed in her mind like a broken record. The humiliation wasn't in being caught. It was in realizing how completely she'd been outmaneuvered. The coldest part? The man she betrayed didn't scream. He didn't throw things. He didn't chase revenge. He had already won before she even knew she was playing. Everything, the whispered promises, the flirtations, the secret hotel meetings, hadn't been hers to control. She had been handed the pen, but someone else had written the script. With no house, no car, no access to the account she once took for granted, there was only one place left to go. A place she had avoided like a plague for years. A place she once considered beneath her. Her parents' home. That modest little house in a quiet neighborhood where people mowed their own lawns and shopped at discount stores. The same parents she once scoffed at, whose phone call she ignored while sipping wine with Newport socialites. She stood at their doorstep, holding 2 worn-out suitcases and more shame than she'd ever thought one person could carry. Her mother opened the door and didn't say a word, just wrapped her in a hug. Chelsea didn't even try to stop the tears. There was no mask left to wear. Days passed in slow motion. She spent most of them curled on the couch, staring at the ceiling or sitting by the window, thinking about herself, about who she had become, and how she had so willingly walked away from people who truly loved her for a life that turned out to be empty as a showroom mannequin. She remembered laughing at simple lives, believing that money, status, beauty, that image was everything. But stripped of it all, she finally saw the truth. What remained wasn't glamorous. It was raw, quiet, and painful, but it was real. Meanwhile, across town, Preston's life didn't just go on, it flourished. And soon, people started to notice. At first, it was just whispers. A few Instagram stories. A blurry photo in a friend's group chat. But then came the bombshell. A crystal-clear photo taken at brunch. There he was, Preston, smiling, holding hands, laughing. And beside him, Ruby. The one woman Chelsea had never expected to see again. Not like this. Not on his arm. Ruby. Not just anyone. Not a stranger. Not a name from a past affair. No, Ruby was once Preston's personal assistant, the woman who had stood quietly at the edge of every room while Chelsea waltzed in, commanding attention. The woman Chelsea had overlooked, ignored, and, more often than not, openly belittled in front of others. She remembered it all now, crisp, cruel memories flashing back like a reel on repeat. The snide comments. The cold glares. The way she tossed demands without so much as a glance. In Chelsea's world, Ruby wasn't a person. She was background. And now, she was the woman holding Preston's hand. At first, Chelsea refused to believe it. She scoffed at the idea. A desperate rebound, she thought. A ploy. A jab meant to hurt her. But then came the photos. Not blurry shots taken from a distance. These were intentional. Public. Clear. Preston and Ruby smiling at a charity gala. Walking through an art exhibit. Sitting side by side at a family barbecue, laughing with his parents, the same ones who once treated Chelsea like royalty. And as the images flooded in, so did the reality. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't a game. It was real. He was in love. And not the showy, superficial love that Chelsea had once used to dazzle crowds. This was deeper, rooted, calm. And suddenly, all the moments she had brushed off, all the quiet kindnesses she had dismissed between Preston and Ruby, came rushing back. She remembered the time she snapped at Ruby during a meeting, how the assistant hadn't reacted, hadn't defended herself, just quietly handed Preston his coffee and returned to her seat. She remembered Ruby's subtle efficiency, how she always seemed to be 2 steps ahead, how Preston never had to ask twice. She remembered the way his eyes lingered just a second longer than usual when Ruby left a room, the way he always said thank you to her, and meant it. And Chelsea had laughed it off. Now, no one was laughing, because while she had been chasing thrill and playing dangerous games behind closed doors, Ruby had been there. Present, observant, consistent. She hadn't had to say a word. Life had done it for her. While Chelsea was building illusions, Ruby was building trust. And when the cards finally collapsed, the person standing beside Preston wasn't a replacement. She was his choice. And as that truth dug in, Chelsea stood in front of the mirror, no designer dress, no luxury suite, no doting husband to smooth things over, and stared into the face of a woman she barely recognized. The emptiness wasn't from losing money or status or a man. It was from realizing she had destroyed the only things that were ever real in her life. Not because of what others did, but because of who she chose to become. And now, her punishment wasn't public shame or courtroom losses. It was waking up every morning with a crystal-clear picture of what she had and threw away. Because sometimes, life doesn't come for you with thunder or flames. Sometimes, it just quietly replaces you with someone who never had to fight for attention. Because they earned it, by simply being everything you never valued until it was too late.